That's what I'm talking about, son. Get you some of that daggone pie.
Woo-hoo! Looky there. There's your bug-eyed big one right there.
Getting started. We're getting started.
Here's what I'm talking about. Gosh dang gorilla.
Let's go, baby. Straight meat. God, look at that big one.
All right, everybody, welcome into the BAM Pod. This is your host, Big Ed, and on the line tonight, we've got Zack Thompson. And the reason that we went out and got Zack Thompson is because there's a heck of an event coming up this weekend out here on the West Coast. In this region, this is going to mean, to me, this means a lot. I mean, it's a kind of a nice little, I guess, way of affirming that the West Coast is actually going to jump into the ring and become a bass fishing mecca. So, Zack, welcome to the show, and let's hear what you think about this event coming up.
Well, thanks for having me, Ed. Yeah, I'm excited to be here talking to you this evening. And, the Western Bass Shootout that's going on going into Sacramento on the Sacramento San Joaquin Delta this week is just amazing. In addition to a lot of money, they pick anglers from the three major tours out here, circuits, and combine them all so they get to all go out and kind of fish together and fish for a lot of money. There's a big expo show going on in Sacramento, and it's just a really exciting thing out here in California on the West Coast.
Is it something that you're glad to see of starting to happen? Because, you grew up in this sport too. You really started fishing here. You've been on the West Coast. You've been fishing all over. You've actually fished, in some other places across the country, I believe. And what does this mean to you to have something this big going on here?
Well, I've gotten a chance to fish all over the country, fish some of the major tours back years ago. And, it's great to know that you can be a West Coast angler and be able to get a little bit of a national spotlight, and get that recognition and get that spot on the stage with exposure. It's a big deal. The West Coast has a lot of great anglers and it's got some amazing fisheries. And I think in terms of the bass fishing tournament community, we get overlooked a little bit because we're out here on the West Coast, and a lot of the big tours, the MLF and Bassmaster don't come out here anymore for big national series events. And this gives the guys out here a chance to fish for that same amount of money and kind of help put the West Coast on the map a little bit more than just the U.S. Open, and I think it's really exciting. Unfortunately, I didn't qualify to fish this year. I just missed the qualifying through the Apex, and so it's something I'm gunning for next year for sure.
That's a big statement. Talking about the U.S. Open, because this is one bass is in this. Out here, we really have three major tournaments that are pro-ams. I think one or four of them that are pro-am tournaments that are considered up there, I guess. And one of them wasn't really featured, but the three that are featured, Wild West, the Apex, and One Bass, I've been staples for a little while now. Apex being the newest of all of those, and One Bass, pro-ams. And then, of course, the One Bass, which is everybody knows the U.S. Open. And they also have are they the ones that put on the Clear Lake Open also?
Yeah, they do the Clear Lake Open, they do a Nevada Open, and then they do the U.S. Open. I'm sorry, one's an Arizona Open, I believe.
Arizona, yeah.
But and then MLF is involved in this as well. In that the MLF.
Oh, the Toyota Series
circuit. Yeah, the Toyota Series out here. They're taking representatives from the Apex, which is Wild West. They're taking representatives from the Wild West Pro-Am.
Mm-hmm.
They're taking anglers from the One Bass Opens, and they're taking anglers from the MLF Toyota Series. So it's kind of, because not all the anglers necessarily fish all the circuits out here, which is another issue that we have here on the West Coast.
Right.
It gets a little bit fragmented, but this is bringing a little bit of everybody, and Jeremy DeHart with Wild West Bass and Rick Pierce from Bass Cat worked really hard to get this going, and include, and with the help of Billy Egan from One Bass and from MLF, it's just going to be a great event. And a lot of these anglers know each other, but don't necessarily fish against each other all the time.
Right.
And having it here on the California Delta, it's a huge fishery. They were planning on going out of Sacramento for the blast off, but the really high river flooding is going to keep them from doing that. So they're launching out of BMW, and they're at the Golden One Center in Sacramento, and there's a big expo.
No, wait, don't say that, because they're not
sorry.
going out of Golden One Center. They're going out of the Safe Credit Union Convention Center.
Sorry,
yeah, because if we tell people that, they're going to end up going to a Kings game.
No, you're right. Yeah, the Kings are playing. The Kings are playing for the.
Yeah, their first time back in the playoffs in 17 years, and now they're playing that one. But no, it's going to be at the Safe Credit. And I don't know if anybody's ever looked at this building. If you're in California, it's one of those. This thing is gorgeous. I mean, it is going to be a pleasure to go there. I'm going to be working the show the entire time. I know you probably plan on coming at least one day to be there and see this thing. For me, I think this is such a great event to have out here, and it's good that it's the first annual, so that they're planning on doing it again. They're going to try to make it an everyday thing. Do you think that the best anglers are represented in this?
Absolutely.
Okay.
No, I mean, and I think just the fact that there's anglers that didn't get a chance to qualify because the qualifying criteria was so stringent.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's the best of the best. It's guys that were on their game all last year, and it's going to bring out. It's not like a Pro-Am TOC where 80 guys get to qualify, or a Toyota Series Championship where the top 30 get to go, and then they all converge on another lake, and there's 200 guys there.
Right.
This is, I believe it's 50 anglers, and that was the max that was capped with the qualifications. And you got the best of the best. You got guys that are hungry. You got guys that are seasoned. You got guys that maybe are getting a chance to really get their names out there for the first time. And I think it's great. I think it's, like you say, it's really exciting for the West Coast to have such a special event out here. And not only that, but first place is, I believe, $100,000. So I mean, that's not anything to.
Well, and I was going to ask you that
at.
because, I was going to ask you. I mean, it's $100,000 cash, right? But isn't it another $100,000 in a brand new bass boat? Isn't it a Bass Cat also?
I'm not sure if it's combined. I'm not sure what the purse is in terms of.
Yeah, I don't know I don't know exactly what that is, but I know that they said when I talked to. I believe I was talking to Ken Mall last week when we were recording the show, and he said something about $200,000 is on the line here, $100,000 in cash. I think another $100,000 in a boat. Now I don't know if the boat's going to the winner or if the boat's going to the next place or what it was. I'm gonna have to look that up. But I mean, that's still a lot of money out there. I mean, $100,000 nothing to sneeze at, and another brand new bass boat these days, nothing to sneeze.
No, absolutely. No, and I should know what the purse is, but not qualifying for it. I didn't read all the fine print because I didn't want to be too disappointed.
Right.
But, no, I think more than the money though, I think it's just the fact that it's bringing all the good anglers from across the state and all the different circuits together in one event, and it wasn't just we're going to invite these guys and we're going to invite these guys. It was, this is the criteria that we're using. And we're pulling, the top guys from each circuit, and they're all going to come together. Randy Pringle, from what I understand, is the tournament director. So, it's a seasoned tournament director out here on the West Coast that's not really affiliated with any of those particular circuits, MLS, Horn Bass, or Wild West Bass. So you get an impartial tournament director, and it's something that. I know myself, I'm going to strive for trying to qualify for next year so I don't miss it again and be a part of it, and it's going to be, I believe they're having concerts there at the convention center, and they're going to be having a full expo show, fishing tackle. I'm sure there'll be some hunting stuff there and just general merchandise. And so it'll be a great thing to bring the kids out to, bring the family and check out what Sacramento has to offer. And then be able to see some amazing weigh-ins, throughout the event.
Yeah, I know they're going to be having 2 concerts with 2 different artists, both days of the Friday and Saturday. I know they're going to be having meet and greets with some of the pros. On Sunday, for sure, there will be 40 anglers that didn't make the cut. So if you want to come to, they're going to have they're going to have obligations to go work at their booths and that sort of thing. So there's going to be some meet and greets on those days. There's going to be, this should be a really amazing event to take kids to take your families to go down there and see it. You're going to be in downtown Sac. It's $5 to get in. Find parking wherever you find it. You might pay a little bit more. There's going to be a lot of stuff going on downtown. So, come down and check out what's going on in Sacramento.
Yeah.
But, Zach, you've been, you live pretty much on the Delta. It's one of your favorite places to go. Some of the other lakes around there, Clear Lake, Berryessa, all these lakes are fishing. Some of them have really kicked off and they're going. What do you think about the Delta right now? What is the fishing going to be like out there for these guys? Is the water cleaning up? Is it not? Is it, what's going on out there?
Yeah, well, everything with all the rain after being in the drought for so many years, all the rain that we're getting now, or had gotten at least, it's really changed a lot of things. I think a lot of things are a couple weeks behind schedule of what they would be normally. Mm-hmm. So on the Delta right now, they still, in past years, we'd have had sunfish up right now. We'd have, sight fishing going on. We'd have a bunch of fish, maybe even already, the early phase would already starting to be pulling out from those spawning areas. But right now, I think with the water temps still being in the mid 50s and never really hitting 60 degrees yet in most of the rivers, the fish are just a little bit behind, which means they're really heavy, but they're not catching a lot. You're not going to go out and catch 40, 50 fish in a day, but the fish you catch are going to be better sized. So I think we're going to see some pretty good weights. My prediction is probably in that 58 to 60 pound, 64 pound range, maybe, so
wow.
It's a kind of wide range, but I'd say I think the winner is going to probably be in the 62 pound range.
Yeah.
I think that's doable, but I think there's going to be some guys that struggle. And I think there's going to be, other guys that are just going to catch that 15 pounds a day and just not quite make it. It's tough because when you catch fish now, they're big ones on average, but you're not being able to go out there and really fish a lot of productive water because it's so hit or miss what the water is doing in part of the river that you might be on. So I think on a regular year, they would have hit it really well, or the fishing would have just been banner, but you probably wouldn't have seen as big of weights. I think the weights would have dropped, but people would be catching more fish. But right now, you're still catching those big pre-spawn fish that we usually catch in like February and early March. They're still here in April because the fish just haven't had a chance to get as far along as they would have in that seasonal ritual of spawning. So I think the fishing's tougher than it should be, but at the same time, the weights are going to be a little bit heavier than they would be this time of year. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. I've been out there fishing, and I'll tell you, I've seen the same thing. A lot of fish were pushed off 2 to 3 weeks. They haven't been on, like you said, there should be a lot of fish on beds right now, and they're not, not even close. And one of the nice things that kind of comes out of this, not for you so much, but for me and for the listeners out here that are going to be taking this, is you didn't qualify for this event. So therefore, you can talk about what's going on and like, what would you be doing right now if you were going out on the water today, you're going to go to the Delta and you're going to start fishing now, knowing that this whole next week is supposed to be in the low 60s to mid 60s all week long leading up to this event. What would be your tactic right now to head out there and hit the Delta, and what would you do to be catching fish?
Well, I'd be trying to cover water. I would probably have a heavy drop shot. I'd have a Senko, a chatterbait, and a flipping stick. And I'd probably work through those. If I go to these areas where the water is warmer than the average, if you're finding 56, 58 degree water, I'd probably slow down with the Senko and the drop shot. The water is a little bit dirty, so you can't see the fish, which is good because you can just fish slow, and any of those pre-spawn fish that are just pulling up, you can catch those on a high tide. And then as the water drops, I'd start throwing the reaction bait a little more, the rattle trap, the LV, bait, and just cover a little bit more water when they're pulling out. And I would look for areas where there's not a lot, but close to the spot, anything that's like a spawning pocket, any sort of like dead end slough, fish the front of it, kind of going into it, and then if the water's clear, I'd be looking around for bedfish too. But
Right.
bedfish on the delta are notoriously not the greatest to catch because the water's fluctuating all the time, every day.
Right.
But I kind of have the 1-2 punch of the heavy drop shot, like a 15-pound test, 12, 15-pound test, and a 6-inch straight tail worm, or throwing like a 6-inch Senko, and just fishing slow when I found the warm water, and then covering water in between, especially on those tide swings. It's the delta. Anybody who's fished there knows that the tide makes a big difference, and just the current moving always activates the fish. And so depending on which tide cycle you're at, if it's a high tide, fish up shallow with the slow baits. Lower tide, as it's starting to pull out or push in, I'd be fishing the reaction baits on the outside edges, and that would be what I would be doing right now. And I think there's some punching going on and that kind of stuff too, but it's a little bit more. You're fishing for fewer bites, so you really have to have the confidence to keep it in your hand. But the Senko and the drop shot, chatterbait, and the rattle trap would probably catch more numbers of fish, and you have a chance of catching a big one.
I was going to ask you. Yeah, I was going to ask you that is when you talk about those reaction bites, are you normally looking at bigger fish that way, or are you looking more? So punching is always, you know what? And explain punching a little bit, because a lot of people don't know what it is across. When they're listening to this show, we'll say that word, and it didn't really dawn on me that a lot of people don't know what punching actually is, and we do it differently out here than they do it in other places. So once you break that down a little bit, and then tell us, do you think punching would be the bigger fish, or do you think some of the reaction bait would be?
Well, so when somebody from the West Coast refers to punching, and particularly on an area like the Delta, which is known for it, there's extensive, either very thick and broken up tule mats, or grass and hyacinth and elodia, primrose, all anything that's emergent or just coming up to the surface. So we're actually taking a 1 ounce to a 2 ounce weight feature bait, and we're flipping it into the heavy grass to where if you just threw a regular bait up on top of it, it wouldn't make it through. So a 1 ounce to a 2 ounce weight, somewhere at 1, 1.25, 1.5, 2 ounce, to actually break the canopy through to get that bait to go down. That's what we're talking about when we're punching. So on the Delta, you can go anywhere on the Delta and see stuff that you could technically punch, but you need to look for productive water. So you might end up fishing for a few hours, or run 10 or 15 different spots before you find some fish that are actually active under those mats. And you don't always catch big fish when you're doing it, but you have a chance of catching big fish with it. And my confidence level is high with a punching stick, a heavy weight. So I'll tend to do it more often than maybe somebody who's not used to it. But it's a good way to catch fish. You don't always catch big ones, but this time of year, you're not going to catch many doing it. And so your chances of catching a big one punching is probably higher. But you're going to go for less bites. Whereas the reaction bait, for more water, you may fish through some small ones and then be able to kind of fine tune the presentation and the pattern that you're doing to maybe catch bigger fish. Because a chatterbait this time of year will catch a lot of very large fish, but you have to kind of figure out, okay, they're on the leeward side of a tule island, or they're on this grass flat, or they're using this at a certain time. It's a little bit too technical to be able to explain right now. And not that I'm trying to hide anything, but it's really all time on the water. But the chatterbait, I would be looking to catch. Let me say this: if I was throwing a chatterbait, I would hope I would only get a few bites and catch big ones.
Right.
Same with a flipping stick. But you can also throw a chatterbait and catch a lot of fish, but then you need to realize, hey, I'm only catching small ones. I need to find a different area, or I need to move on to some different looking structure and cover to maybe figure out what the big ones are using, if that makes sense to a listener. But
Bass Angler Magazine is your guide to better bass fishing. Bass Angler is dedicated to helping you catch more and bigger bass no matter what time of year or where you live. This is not your ordinary fishing magazine. Every issue is jam-packed with 30-plus articles from the world's best bass anglers. Bass Angler Magazine is available at bassanglermag.com, Tackle Warehouse, Bass Pro Shops, Cabela's, Gander Mountain, Walmart, and better tackle shops everywhere. Bass Angler also makes a great gift for any angler. Get Bass Angler today and start catching more bass tomorrow. Visit bassanglermag.com or your favorite tackle shop. This is not your ordinary fishing magazine. bassanglermag.com.
And that's one of those things too that you talk about finding that area. Now, there are, especially this time of year, you'll get into a place, where you're catching 2.5, 3 pound, maybe even up to a kicker 4 pound in there. But if you're on the Delta, that body of water is not known. That's not what it's known for. That body of water is known for guys, like you say, punching, flipping, throwing chatterbaits, throwing reaction, and catching 7s, 6s, 8s, 9s, that sort of thing. Is it just an area thing for the most part? Is it like, hey, I'm gonna find these areas and I'm gonna find better fish in those areas this time of year because they're moving to spawn or they're looking to go, into spawning areas? What's your approach on that?
Well, with experience on the river, I know that if I go out and I spend some time on the river and I fish an area and I catch mostly little fish, I'm most likely going to keep catching that same size fish. But so you have to look at it kind of like get 3 2-pound bites or 4 2-pound bites in one area. Go to some other areas that look similar or have a little bit different water flow, and all of a sudden you catch 1 or 2 fish, but they're in like the 4 to 6 pound class. And you keep fishing and you find another area where you catch multiple fish, but they're all that 2 to 3 pound class. And then you find another area where you catch a 6 or 7 pounder. You need to start being able to focus your time on those areas or types of areas where you caught the larger fish, because they don't necessarily spend all their time together to intermix, especially this time of year. The bigger ones want to spawn where they're successful spawning. The little ones don't really care where they spawn. So you can easily find an area where there's a lot of little buck bass up and a lot of small females, but that's not what you need if you're trying to be competitive in a tournament. So you want to, there's a lot of subtleties that you'll notice as you spend more time on the river. That's like, I tend to catch 6 pounders on this type of stuff versus the small ones. And so, yeah, I don't know if I can explain it any better other than.
No, that's pretty much.
If you go to the Delta and you have a spot where you've caught more than 1 6 pounder over the course of a couple of years, that's an area where I would spend more time. And so luckily I've spent a lot of time on the river where I know where I've caught larger fish as opposed to smaller fish. So now I just tend to spend my time around those areas. And year after year, most often those bigger fish will use those same areas. They won't be the same fish, obviously, but they'll be that same size class fish. And for whatever reason, the larger fish like to use those areas, and it's repetitive over the time. And it could be as silly as one tule berm in a slough that's maybe 50 or 75 yards long, that for some reason the bigger fish tend to use that area more than 100 yards to the left or the right. And so once pay a lot of attention to where you catch those bigger fish on the Delta, and kind of consider that one of your spots, and don't just fish the whole slough and say, I catch them in, I go to White Slough and I catch big fish. It's like, where in White Slough did you catch them? Because if you caught them on one of the corners or a certain stretch of docks, use that as a base of what to look for and try to duplicate that. But also don't discount the fact that you found an area where big fish use. They tend to use those areas annually, and kind of keeping your memory banks. And that's why guys you'll hear about on the Delta, a lot of guys talk about, they'll run the tide, or I ran my milk run.
Right.
And it's because they go from, I caught a big fish here, I caught a big fish there, I caught a big fish here, and they just kind of hop from spot to spot. And the Delta's not the kind of place that you can just put the trolling motor down and fish all day and expect to be competitive in a tournament. You have to be able to maximize your time at each area when it's productive. And a lot of it has to do with tide, which throws a whole nother variable into it. But when you start to understand, I caught fish here at a high tide, I catch fish there at a high tide, you can start putting the pieces together, like how far is the high tide differential from spot A to spot B? Can I fish both at that same time in the day? A lot of times you can, and then you get caught up in running the tide, which is great as long as you can keep your timing. And that's why personally for myself, I don't run the tide, but so I'll pre-fish the Delta in general areas, like Frankscock is an area, Mildred is an area, Big Break is an area, right? And then I'll try to figure out where maybe I think the better fish are at that time of the year, or for that event, and then I'll spend the majority of my time fishing there, and then fishing what I can at a high tide and what I can at a low tide, based on just past experience and kind of what things seem to be going on during that event. And so for this event coming up right now, for these guys, a lot of money's on the line, and it's not for points. So these guys are going to be looking at this tournament like the Bassmasters Classic.
Right.
They're going to win. So that first day is critical for them to be competitive and to kind of keep themselves in it, because you can't win it the first day, but you can definitely lose it.
Yeah.
So these guys need to be able to go out. They need to spend 8 hours being efficient and trying to catch the biggest fish they can, knowing that, if they drop the ball severely on that first day, it's going to be an uphill climb the whole way. So I can see them getting out there and concentrating on those big fish areas, whatever they found in practice.
Right.
Areas where they're hoping to catch 5-6 pound fish, try to come in with that 20 to 24 pound bag that first day. And, it's going to mean fishing for less bites, for trying to catch those big fish, and so I think there's going to be I think there's a big advantage to the guys being able to have so much more fishing time that they're blasting out of BMW.
Right.
Because that basically puts them right there in the Delta proper, where they don't have to spend an hour running down to Sacramento, which I was kind of excited to hear about to begin with, because that puts a whole nother level into it, because guys would only get a few hours to fish at that point, and that would really, turn the screws on these guys pressure-wise. It'd be like, I need to go and I need to execute, I need to be able to catch them in that short window of time, and now they're going to get pretty much a full day. I think it probably helps those guys who aren't the Delta more than it helps the locals.
Right.
Because the locals would have a little bit more of an advantage, maybe, to say, hey, no, I just need to be able to run here and get my few hours, and I should probably, I can catch good fish, where these other guys would be a little bit more worried about the run time and where they're going to go and how they're going to choose their spots. And now it's a little bit going to make it a little bit more open. So
I was going to say, so basically what you're saying is this is going to, by moving it from the Sacramento area blast off down to the Delta at a B&W, which is a place down there, is a launch facility down there, and it's going to level the playing field a little bit more.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, because that is important that guys, all of a sudden they don't have to give up an hour. Even some of the local guys, I'm sure, were dreading giving up an hour, especially, in some of the peak time. Like I said, I haven't been on the Delta this year because I have not wanted to deal with that water, and everybody that I've talked to says it's not fishing worth a darn. Now it's going to be real interesting to see what these guys can do down there, because the river has been notorious for fishing bad right now. Not normally,
right,
But right now, with the way that the water's coming down, it's just blowing, it's muddy. We can't even launch out of the facility it was going to launch out of because it's so flooded. So,
Right.
even with the coming warm up and that sort of thing, it's still not going to be clear water fishing, looking at, like when the Bassmasters were here and the guys were winning because they were looking at 12 pounders on beds. That's not going to be a part of this.
But those guys were only getting like 3 hours, 4 hours of fishing in a day, and the rest of it was running back and forth. So, when you couple a short day with the tidal of fishery, your time is even more constrained because you may have a spot that you wanted to fish, but if it takes you an extra half an hour to get there and an extra half an hour to get back, you're stuck with only fishing the tide that's available to you. You don't get to say, "Oh, I'll wait for the low tide or I'll wait for the high tide."
Yeah,
you're just fishing the tide that you get when you get there. And to me, the reason that would have helped the locals is because they would be able to say, "Oh, well, it's not worth it for me to go there at a low tide, or it's not worth it for me to go there at the high tide."
Right.
But some of the non-locals would be like, "This is the only spot that I catch fish, so I'm going there regardless." And that doesn't usually work so well, on average, right? But the locals would be able to say, well, "I just need to be able to get here. I need to be able to get there." But so this is going to really even the playing field, which is great. Because it's going to give everybody a better shot and more fishing time. So if I qualify next year, I'd like to think that it goes out of Sacramento.
Yeah.
And be able to play my cards that direction. But we'll see how it goes. I'm just really excited to see a big event here on the West Coast. Not the Bassmasters Classic. It's not the Red Crest, MLF Red Crest, but it's something that the West Coast can provide our anglers. Try to, excite the kids, because you hear all the time.
Yep.
Some anglers say, the first time I went to the Bassmasters Classic, I was in the stands and I was looking at these guys and I was like, I'm going to be there someday. And they figure out, they're able, by fishing back east in the South, to be able to fish the Opens, to qualify for the Elites, to make it to the Classic, and West Coast anglers have such a harder route to get there that at least, I'm just hoping that there's, a couple kids that go to the weigh-in this weekend and see that go on and be like, you know what, I want to be that guy. And instead of feeling like they have to move to Alabama to do it, they can look for it as a venue for them to become, that next guy that does it out here on the West Coast, and they don't have to leave. And they might like,
Bass U, folks. Information is pouring over. If you want to learn more about every lake, how to fish, shallow, deep, in between, skipping docks and rocks and cranking, slow wiggling, chatter, smattering, you get it at Bass U. We got the best of the best. If somebody's ever caught a bass on something and perfected the technique, we got you covered. Get on Bass U TV, check it out, sign up, be a member, be part of it, folks. Keep learning. I'm Gerald Swindle. Subscribe to Bass U.
And that's something I was going to ask you is, you just said something that's really, intriguing. One, there's never been a Bassmasters Classic here, or an FLW, or a MLF, or there's never been a championship out here. Never once. Any of any of the major groups. I'd love to see one come out here at least. One of the things that we've been talking about that's really, that you've said over and over is the local advantage that came from, launching out of Sacramento, then going down, and now it's going to be a W, so it's going to level the playing field. Well, it's one of the same kind of thing when you talk about going across the country, everything, right? All of a sudden, those guys all have their local knowledge. They all have, being back there, fishing these major lakes that people hear about all the time, the Gunnersvilles and the Lay Lake and the Center Hills and blah, blah, all these different lakes that, that everybody fishes on and everybody gets down there, gets to see, but they never come out here to level the playing field, to say, hey, why don't you guys show us what you really got when you go out there and try to fish those waters. To me, what you just said, somebody sitting in the stands, seeing this and then saying, hey, I want to be that guy someday. I want to be the next, Luke John or Zack Thompson, or, one of these guys that's making a big noise out here. Even Luke John himself, when I interviewed him, he said, yeah, one of my, ambitions is to go cross country, fish in the MLF or fish in the Bassmaster, whichever one it is. And to me, that says a lot. It's a little sad because I wish that guys would look at the West, this region, this area, and say, I want to fish out there. There's, good fishing. It's definitely different than fishing back there. I've fished a lot back there now, and I don't think I've ever fished over like 6 feet of water. I was at Gunnersville, I was in Florida, I was in Alabama, Tennessee, and it's like, do you ever fish deep water here? And it's no. I watch these shows on TV, and they come back, and then you come out here and you start watching some of our shows on, the Apex. You start and you watching, different the pro-ams, and these guys are fishing, 18 to 25 feet, and they don't even know how to fish that kind of water. Guys back there wouldn't know what to do. It's so weird. And I think there's this region of the country has such an advantage that they should come out here. And this event this weekend is going to highlight that. I wish it was, I hope it goes national. I hope, like you said, I hope there are kids that watch that and go, wow, I want to go fish in California. I want to go see that body of water. And a lot of them do. A lot of them see the California Delta, the Clear Lakes, the Shastas, and they go, wow, one of these days I'd love to fish there. Why can't they make that?
Yeah.
And what do we have to do out here to make this region relevant? And it's events like this. It's events like the Apex and some of the other ones to get people to come out here and see that, there's money to be made here, but it is going to be tougher because you're not going to be able to travel to as many different states in such a short time period. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. Well, yeah, no, I do. I think the biggest thing that we can do out here is to show support, and people show up to the expo, people show up to the weigh-ins, and show their support for the sport, because I think the biggest thing that we don't have that the South does and back East has is just that fishing in the outdoors is so much more prevalent, right, in day to life. Kids and parents and people recreate a lot more in the outdoors in the fishing and hunting industry back east. It's just a little bit more accepted. And so when you come out, when you grow up out here like you and I did, luckily we had parents that wanted to take us out in the outdoors.
Yes.
So, hunting and fishing was a big part of our young lives, but a lot of parents don't have that background here on the West Coast. And so a lot of kids don't get that experience of what it's like to go catch a fish or to go hunting. And so can't really change that by telling people that it's fun to go out and do. But if kids see that it's fun, or parents say, hey, there's this cool thing going on in Sacramento, let's go check it out and get a chance to see what's going on, it's just a little bit more exposure, because we just need to grow the market out here. There's cities in other states like Texas where there's probably more bass boats per capita in their county than there is in our state, and so that's a big deal. And that's why a lot of these bigger companies don't look at the West Coast as a major player, because they sell a lot of boats, or they don't sell a lot of motors, or they don't, it's all business. And so they're going to spend more dollars in their advertising in markets that make more money, right? And so us as fishermen out here, as good as we are, or as well as we can fish, or all that, doesn't really matter if you can't convert it to a business that says, I sell a lot of boats.
Whatever it is, whether it's tackle,
whether it's ammunition for hunting or guns. And guns are really sensitive out here. Everybody wants, about a gun in California, it's like some
it's definitely a major negative talking point. Guys are afraid. People out here really are afraid to open up and talk about what it's for, what it is, what they, I talk to friends that are definitely against, guns, and they're like, well, those things are made for killing. And it's like, Well, they're made for shooting. They're not necessarily made. I mean, cars are kill people, but they're not made for it.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
it's one of those things. It's like that's not what they are. And fishing is the same thing. We're talking about guys that go out and I think sometimes out here it's taken so secretly and so hush hush that nobody wants to talk about this lake or nobody wants to talk about that lake or whatever, because that's where they like to go fishing and they don't like the pressure that might be put on by so many other people coming out there. But at the same time, they say, oh, we need to get this sport to grow.
Yeah.
Those are counterproductive.
Well, yeah, no, it is counterproductive. And that's why, it's great that all the major circuits that are out here on the West Coast are being represented in the Western Bass Shootout. It gives each organization a chance to say, hey, we're a part of this. Come check this out. And it's not that they're sanctioning or not sanctioning it by saying, come fish MLF because you can qualify for the Western Bass Shootout. But
Right.
at the same time, it's an option for the anglers, and it gives them just that one extra platform. And at the end of the year, it gives each organization that much more exposure, that hopefully somebody notices that and says, oh, I see the Wild West Pro-Am Series next year schedule, and, I want to be a part of that. Or if MLS or One Bass, whatever it may be, right? It's just
Right.
the exposure hopefully will help to grow the West Coast. And the anglers on the West Coast don't need the exposure because we're good anglers, right? And we sent, Skeet Reese, Justin Lucas, Aaron Martins. I mean, you can rattle off names, Luke Clausen.
Yep.
You can rattle off names, Brett Hite. I mean, you can go on and on and on. Brett Erler. I mean, these are guys who are staple national anglers, right?
Yes.
Past, present, and future, that are from the West Coast. And the only reason that they're able to be successful as anglers is because they've been forced to go back east.
Right.
So what Wild West has tried to do in the last few years with the Apex to try to get a professional level circuit out here on the West Coast. And a lot of people that aren't in the fishing know-how, they don't realize what they're trying to do, but the anglers realize it. And hopefully with the Western Bass Shootout, the other anglers that aren't participating in Wild West Bass are still going to say, you know what, we all need to work together towards this common goal, try to grow the sport out here, because, a lot of guys I know qualify for the MLF championship, but they don't decide to go to Lake Wheeler or
Right.
Gunnersville or wherever it is, because it's a 1,500-mile drive. They're spending all this time to go out there, and they're fishing against people that live there.
Yep.
But they're never going to come here because the market isn't big enough here for them to justify saying we're going to bring our championship to California.
Well, yeah, and it's one of those things that, and let me say this, because where we live, not so much where you live, but where I live, because where you live, you live down towards Oakland, so you have San Francisco Giants baseball, you've got Oakland A's baseball, you've got the Sacramento Kings in the area, you've got the Warriors right there, you've got the 49ers right there, you got, you used to have the Raiders, there's so much sports, things like that. So to put this into kind of a thing that most people can relate to out here, especially, it's like the Sacramento Kings. It is the Sacramento team. It's the only professional team in Sacramento. So they are a big draw. They finally made it back to the playoffs. And it's so hard for them to get really great players because it's such a small market. And there's not a lot of people that are putting their money, not their advertising dollars or anything else, in it. Bass fishing to me has kind of been the same way. And I think you agree in this, just in the way that you've said these things, is that if we were to reach out and do anything, the anglers know what it is. The anglers know how big it is or how big it can be. But it's those sponsors. It's those other people out there that should come to the Jeremy DeHarts, that should come to Apex, that should come to the other pro-ams in the area, the Toyota series, the MLF stuff, the Apex, all the Wild West, the guys, the One Bass stuff. and advertise and be a part of it and help grow it and show that, man, that's a good thing to be a part of because it's new and it's the only thing like it going out there.
Right.
Is that, would you kind of agree with that on those topics?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's all supporting the companies that are trying to do business out here, right? So, I mean,
yeah,
it's tough though because it's expensive to live in California, right? And so
extremely
to have expendable income to go buy an $80,000 boat is not that easy, right? And the problem is that a lot of people that have that expendable income don't look at hunting and fishing as what they want to spend their time with. But I think that paradigm shift can happen if you get more kids involved and more parents involved with wanting to do something with their kids like fishing,
right.
And so, I mean, if
well,
people
well,
and that's why I think going to the expo and checking out what's going on in a place like Sacramento is great because it has the exposure and really open the eyes of so many people that maybe just don't see it as a recreational sport. That they'd rather spend $100,000 on a wakeboard boat to go out and wakeboard a couple times a year, but they could take that same money, put it into a fishing boat, and be able to fish 12 months out of the year. But it's just a paradigm shift. And so, having something like the expo associated with the Western Bass Shootout is such a big deal because you don't need to be an angler to enjoy that, and at the same time, it can open your eyes to what's available out there. And we haven't had these kind of things. We've had expos and sport and boat shows and that kind of stuff, but that just draws that already endemic group of anglers that want to participate. And hopefully with the concerts and the show that goes on with this tournament and combining the two, it allows people to see what fishing does as a whole, right? It's not just the fishing, but it's everything that goes along with it and how it can be fun and how it can be exciting and how it can be a recreation that's accessible to everyone.
Well, one of the other, not to cut you off on that too much but one of the other things that I think even you just passed up on right there is the fact that people really forget how much money an angler or a hunter or anything else puts into the system to help conservation, to help keep the water clean. I don't want to go out and fish in scummy water and, it's polluted and nasty and the fish come up with three eyes. I want a good, healthy fishery. I want the environment taken care of. I want, land and animals. You've traveled across this country as well as I have, and I've seen a lot of areas where you can't go out and recreate as much. You can't go hike and you can't go, you can't go hunting, you can't go fishing, you can't go up into the mountains and run around because there's not a lot of public land. You have to find these little pockets and that's what you use. But here in California, Nevada, Arizona, Washington, Oregon, there is so much public land that we as sportsmen and outdoorsmen contribute. And if other Californians want to come to this show and just see a little bit of what kind of money and what kind of effort we actually put into doing this, I think it'd be a huge eye opener just to come see what we do as outdoorsmen and outdoors women,
For nearly 100 years, Grundens has built gear you can trust to keep you fishing no matter the weather conditions. With head-to-toe coverage of high-performance outerwear, sportswear, footwear, and much more, it's no wonder Grundens products are backed by some of the bass fishing's most prominent figures, such as Skeet Reese, Randall Tharp, Adrian Avina, and Jonathan Van Dam, just to name a few. Grundens. We are fishing.
No, it's true. It's true. Absolutely. I hope they get a good reception this weekend, and I think everybody that gets a chance to hear this or just hear about it in general, think about just spending those few hours that it would take to get out there and see it, because I think it's going to open a lot of people's eyes. And Rick Pierce and Bass Cat Boats. I mean, I run a Ranger, so I've run it for years, and so I'm not beholden to any company, but Rick Pierce is a visionary that spends a lot of his free time, trying to grow the industry. And yes, he wants to sell bass cap boats, but at the same time, he sees the value of growing the West Coast market. And,
Correct.
And that's a big deal. That's what, the industry needs to see in order for them to take it seriously out here. And, and him being a part of it with Jeremy and seeing this thing to fruition is a big deal. And, people right now might not recognize it, but 10, 15 years down the road, hopefully that's when the fruits of their labor are really seen, to where, California is up there in the marketplace with, other states, like Texas and Arkansas and Oklahoma, right, where, you could drive down the street there and any block you're going to find a bass boat. California, you might be hard pressed to find a bass boat within a couple miles of each other.
Right. That is that is definitely something that I've seen recently. When I was out there in Tennessee, it was like every other driveway had a bass boat in it. And even ones you didn't see was like some guy, you come back the next day and there's a bass boat sitting in the driveway. It's like, oh, that guy was out fishing, or that was out doing something, and it doesn't have to be. I mean, there's so many opportunities. The thing is the population here. The population can show up. They talk about these huge events that show up, Texas. Oh yeah, they drew, 400 boats and they, did this and that and other. And they had, 80,000 people show up. I hope that 80,000 people should come to this event. I'm not guessing it probably gets that big, but the population is here for it to get that big in a heartbeat.
Oh yeah.
California prides itself in, we support this, we support that, we show up to this, we show up to that. But they don't show up to our events. Show up to our events. Come see it. Come check it out. Come see this event and have your mind blown a little bit. Watch a live weigh-in. Understand how much they take care of these fish. Guys like Zack are out there changing this sport in the way that they handle the fish, the way that they take care of the resource, because it's important to take care of the resource. I want to catch that fish again when it's, 5 years older or 2 years older or, whatever. I know you're the same way. You're not out there throwing fish on the bank and drinking 24 ounces and kicking back and hoping it. There's nothing wrong with going out and recreating and having fun. But it's just not what we do. And it's not what fishing is for us.
Yep. I agree. No, I in a nutshell, I think the Western Bass Shootout is a huge opportunity for the West Coast to kind of show that we're committed, and then hopefully with people that show up to the show, just show the involvement with the community to where these companies are willing to put a little bit more every year into their advertising budget, a little bit more every year into their promotions, so that, more people can see the value of spending time outdoors and fishing. And it doesn't have to be competitive bass fishing. You don't have to say, I'm willing to jump into a pro-am next year. But just being involved in the industry out here and seeing what's available is gonna help grow the sport to where, this year they get so many numbers, and then hopefully next year they get more people coming, and then in a few years it might rival some of the larger fishing events that we have across the country, where people are like, what, that was a really good show last year. My son really enjoyed it. We're going to go back again next year. And just grow and grow and grow.
And let me wrap your head around this too. How many major sponsors have come into this sport since you've been in it? I mean, you've been in it a long time too. And, since you've been a part of this, how many of those big sponsors have come in and then left with a bad taste in their mouth? Because I know, it's not very many. Most everybody that comes into this and advertises and shows support sticks around for 15, 20 years.
Yeah. No, it's true. And there's a lot of really good companies that are based out of California too, that people don't even get, there's a lot of companies that build their roots here in California and stick around, and there's boat dealerships that have been here for years and years and years that cater to all types of people, outdoorsmen,
water skiers, jet
Gone
skiers. Yeah.
Yeah, well,
everything.
like Gone Fishing Marine is like a great example. I mean, they sell every kind of boat that a guy could possibly want, whether it's a fishing ski all the way up to a high dollar Ranger or nitro kind of bass
Yep.
boat. And they've got service and they've got everything you could want for the outdoors. I think they even sell like four-wheelers, like
Right.
ATVs and all that stuff. So
Right.
they've been around, but it's unfortunate that you have to go so far to get to a good shop, because
Right.
there used to be a shop, there used to be tackle shops in Oakland, and they're all gone now because it's just the market is so temperamental. But other states, you have a boat dealership, every town, if somebody's selling boats.
I went to Alabama, was out there fishing on Gunnersville, came back, decided we need to stop at a little gas station, get some gas, some snacks, whatever. I walked into one of the most well established, equipped tackle stores I'd ever seen in my life. I mean, this thing was a gas station, and it had everything in there that you could possibly want. It was crazy.
Yep.
That should be here, and it used to be.
Yeah, well, we don't want people having to leave the state to go find
Enjoy it.
A state that's pro,
Right.
enjoying the outdoors, But like,
Yeah.
Speaking of brick and mortar tackle shops, Robert Cloutier opened up the Bass Hole out there on the Bethel Island, and for years there was the Hook, Line, and Sinker, which was run by a gentleman named Gene Buchholz for years, and it was an unbelievably good shop. Well, when he ended up selling and it went to different owners, it kind of went downhill, and for quite a few years there was no good tackle shop out there on the Delta. I mean, you were literally had to go a long ways just to find one.
Yeah.
And Robert opened up the Bass Hole right there on Bethel Island, and he's got one of the best stocked brick and mortar tackle shops now that you can find anywhere. And same with Jay at Hooked out in Ione.
Right.
Very similar. He's got a great shop, brick and mortar. But
it's right on the water. It's right on the water, basically.
No, and it's right on the water. But my point is they're hundreds of miles apart, or 100 and some miles apart.
Right.
So it's not that easy, and so it's important to support the local tackle shops as somebody that wants to see the industry grow. It's important to support those boat manufacturers that are supporting us, like Basscat, and then at the same time, just getting involved and seeing what it's all about, whether it's hiring a guide on a local lake or just getting out and fishing the bank. But a lot of that also comes back to parents that don't have a reference to show their kids how to fish. I see so many people when I go to some of my local lakes with my kids, or where we walk the bank. Every single time I'll see a parent who's gone to a Walmart and bought the tackle box that has the bobbers and the weights and the hooks and just kind of a little bit of everything. And he thinks he's going to go out and show his kid how to have a good time fishing. And they don't catch any fish. And that puts a bad taste in the parent's mouth and the kid's mouth, where they don't want, it's like, this is no fun, But hopefully they go to the show this weekend and get to see a lot of the vendors that are there, talk to the anglers that are there, and people that are supporting the booths, get a little bit of a different thing, see these guys come across stage in their shiny boat and spark that, what, that looks like fun. I'm going to figure out how to make that work. I'm going to figure out how to catch fish, because that's what you and I did when we were kids. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have all this YouTube, and luckily we saw fishing as something fun that we wanted to learn, and a lot of kids want to learn how to play baseball, or they want to learn how to play basketball. Well, once they want to learn how to fish, it'll be a whole different thing, and that just comes from exposure to the sport. And things like the Western Bass Shootout hopefully give that exposure, and that's what it needs to be. Because as much as it's nice to talk about the angler being able to win $100,000, that's great, but that doesn't grow the sport. What grows the sport is all the people that
Right.
get excited about fishing, and hopefully
Well,
that's
yeah.
what comes out of the show.
And I would say that, it's a little bit of a, I mean, if some guy, if somebody takes their kids and goes to this event and they come see this thing and they're, whether it's a mom taking their kids that love to do something outdoors or love, the dad or whatever, and they go out there and they see somebody win $100,000, it does give a little bit of excitement to like, holy moly, there's money to be made in this sport. I've said this, all year long, last couple of years, whatever it's been now, is that yes, that the whole scandal with the guys stuffing weights in the walleye to catch fish and to win and all this stuff, it was negative. It was a negative thing for our sport. But at the same time, it was also a little bit of a positive because probably for at least 3 to 4 months, the only thing I ever heard people would say was, "Did you know those guys were fishing for $30,000?" And I would just look at them and go, "So." Bass fishermen and walleye fish, that was nothing. That wasn't even that, that big of a purse. We have a lot more money out there. And if we get bigger sponsors, and one of the things that you talked about was people that, go to Walmart and they buy this little kit and they go out and try to fish and don't catch anything. What is it? I've been approached many times when I'm at a lake and somebody's like, "Hey, how many fish did you catch? Or did you catch any fish today?" And it's like, "Yeah, we caught, 15, 20, whatever." And then I hand them, maybe not the rod and reel, but I hand them all the bait and the tackle and everything else that I caught them on. And I go, "Hey, this is what you want to do." And I take 10 minutes out of my day and I try to get it so those people can catch some fish, or maybe try to catch some fish the next time they're out, or later that day or tomorrow or whatever it is, because what you just said is so important. We have to help educate people and make it easier for them to do. Some of that is that this sport has become a little bit of an elitist sport. You just talked about an $80,000 boat, $100,000 boat, events like this that only cost $5 to get into, and you get to go talk to, you don't get to go pay $5 and go talk to a Buster Posey, an Adam Judge, whatever. You're not doing that in this sport,
right?
You can go talk to a Zack Thompson, a Ken Maw, a Mark Lassane, name somebody that's got a name in this sport, Skeet Reese, Ish Monroe, all these guys that are across the country that have grown up here, Cody Myers, Luke Johns, Luke Clausen's, they're available. You ask them questions, they will answer them honestly 99.9% of the time.
Yeah. Well, you're absolutely right. And the cool thing about fishermen too is most of them are just regular. I mean, they're just regular guys that like to fish, and anybody can be a regular guy that likes to fish.
Yep.
And anybody can put in the time, and it doesn't take that much time just to figure out some of the basics to catching fish. Where you feel like when you go fishing, it's not a oh, maybe I'll catch a fish today. It's like I'm going to go out and figure out how to catch a fish today, and that and there's an easy distinction right there. You can be the guy who just thinks that fishing is unattainable, or you can spend a little bit of time to realize, oh, all I got to do is adjust my technique from this day to that, follow a few seasonal patterns, and my chances of catching fish go up exponentially. And then
and the chance exactly. And when you take your kids out, now you know how to teach them how to fish.
Right. And it's not just throw your bobber out and wait for the bobber to go down. There's so many people that think fishing is buying a 6-pack of beer and putting a bobber on and throwing it out there and hoping you catch a fish. And that's just that's not fishing. That's just, I don't know what that is, but.
Well, and you told me earlier today, your son went out there and he wanted to learn how to, how do I clean a fish? That is something that's that's legitimate. I mean, people don't know how to, whether it's hunting or fishing or whatever, it's like, now you've taken this animal, or you've taken this game, or you've done whatever, where you've taken that fish home. What do I do now? How do I make it enjoyable if I do want to consume it? Or how do I do this, or how do I do that? And we kind of miss that because people talk about so much about catch and release. Well, I'm sorry, but this is a renewable resource. If you take a couple of fish, it ain't that big of a deal.
No, well, and that was the thing for my son now is 6 and my daughter's 11, and they've been fishing as much as I could take them, and they've been fortunate enough to catch fish pretty early on because that same thing where I would cater the day to go out to go do something that I knew they would have a really high probability of catching a fish on their own, right? Whether it's me knowing the spot, telling them where to cast, having them throw the right bait that they could hook a fish easily with, but we just never, we would always let them go. And then my son, he said, Dad, I just want to learn, I want to learn what it's like to clean a fish. Like, and it kind of dawned on me. It's like, you know what? I've never shown him that. So, so we went out to Lake Berryessa and we fished and we caught some fish. And I decided, I'm like, okay, this is the one we're going to keep. And then at the end of the day, I asked him, hey, taking this fish, means taking his life, and we're going to eat him afterwards, but it's not a funny thing to do. It's not a joke. It's a serious thing, So we had the fish in the live well at the end of the day. We pulled the boat out of the water, and I asked him again. I said, I just want to make sure you want to do this now. This is what it means, and I explained to him how we're going to do it and everything. And he was like, I'll be a little bit sad, Dad, but he's like, yeah, I want to learn. I was like, well, that's okay. I was like, there's nothing wrong with keeping a fish to eat if you're going to use it. You don't just kill them just to kill them and throw them away or waste them, And so we went through the whole process, and he was a little bit, I think he was a little bit, there was a little bit more reflection he was taking on it. And I was glad to see that, because it wasn't just show me what it looks like. It was kind of like, wow, yes. And, it was a little bit of a heavy moment, but it was good because I guess when I was a kid, it wasn't even a consideration. It was just one of those things where we went fishing, we caught some fish, we were taking them home. This is how you process them, And so, I can appreciate the generation now that's a little bit more reflective on killing an animal. And not that I took it lightly when I was a kid, but it was less of a concern then than it is now,
Right.
So I think it's just approaching it in the right way to where you're not making light of the situation, but you're also not overly dramatizing the situation. Making a big drama, right? Where this poor animal, and that's what I told him. I said, we eat hamburgers, we eat steak, we eat chicken. All those animals had to be killed at some point to be able to be turned into food. And so, it's one of those things, but, I think that's part of California is a little bit, be so political nowadays that everything has to have, rights to this and rights to that. I mean, not that I think people should go around just wasting fish, but at the same time, if somebody wants to go out and keep some fish, there's no problem with that. I mean, and you catch a 6-pound bass, it's not the best eating fish, but you go out and catch 12 to 14-inch, spotted bass, and those things are great eating. I mean, they're really good. And there's plenty of them, so it's not like you're gonna be destroying a lake if you go to Berryessa or Orville or Shasta and keep a limit of fish to eat at the end of the day. I mean, that's just
that's conservation. That's why we put limits on them.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you don't keep any fish out of any of the lakes, they all end up being really small, and everybody complains about, you go to Orville and you catch a bunch of small fish. It's like, well, nobody keeps any. So where do you think they're going to go?
Yeah, exactly.
I think we're off topic a little bit, but
that's okay. I mean, this is we're talking about this event. We got to wrap this up anyways. But Zach, first of all, I want to say thank you very much for coming on and talking about all these, hard to talk about topics sometimes. And this event that's coming up, I hope it can be an eye opener for a lot of people. Like you said, I hope this is a big event. I really love to see. I think Ken Moss said it best. I'd love to see 1,000 people show up to the weigh-in, to the live weigh-in.
Yeah.
And I'd love to see, 10,000. I'd love to see 160,000. I want everybody to come and look at this sport, enjoy it, and know that when they look at that stage and they go, wow, those guys are weighing in fish, what are they going to do with that? Let me tell you what they're going to do with those fish, because that is something that I've been asked a lot. They're going to take them, they're going to weigh them, they're going to put them back in the water, they're going to take them out to a live release boat. That live release boat is going to handle them, make sure they're in good, healthy shape, give them all the stuff they need to get back into this shape after they're being stressed out a little bit. They take them back out into the river system and they let them go alive and well. We have a 99.9% live release on all these tournaments. There's always a fish that's going to end up getting, hurt or something like that, or deep hooked or foul hooked or something like that. So yes, there may be a dead fish once in a while. And that, again, goes right back into the resource, and people take that home and we give them away, and people say, go home and eat them. So that's what's going to happen at these events. But please, if you hear this comes out on Wednesday. You've got Thursday and Friday and Saturday and Sunday to come out there and see this event. The event starts on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday is the live weigh-in. If you can make it out, please, if you hear this, come out and see it. Watch what this is.
And like I said, I mean, all these fishermen are accessible people. They're just people like anybody else. They just love to fish. So if you love to golf, it'd be like going to a golf place and just talking to a bunch of buddies who like to golf. It's not. You shouldn't look at any of these anglers as being unapproachable. They're all just guys like you and me that just love to fish. Or a lot of guys love to golf. A lot of guys love to go shoot hoops or whatever it is. It's just
right.
It's something different that if you haven't been exposed to it, or you want to just take a look and see what this is all about, especially if you have little kids.
Yeah,
there's nothing better than trying to get the kids off of the screen and out fishing. I struggle with that with my kids.
Right.
You got to get them outside to do something else. That they'll have plenty of time to be on the computers throughout their life. But if you get them out in the outdoors, it's just one other thing that you can do on a nice sunny weekend. And this weekend's gonna be beautiful. So,
correct.
Go down to Sacramento, check out the show. See what this fishing game's all about, and I think it's going to open some eyes.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Zach, once again, thank you very much. We're going to wrap this show up. In a couple more weeks, we're going to have maybe a little new format, and I think we're going to have Zach back for that kind of format. But we're going to do a little bit of a debate thing. I think we're going to have Luke Clausen and one of his guys come on, and then we're going to do a little debating about their way they fish, the way they approach lakes, the way they approach things. So tune back in. I hope we get that worked out and get it going, and it should be the next event. So Zach, thanks again, man, and have a good night, bud.
Well, thanks for having me. Take care, everybody.
All right. Well, we'll see y'all in a couple weeks. Thanks for listening.